Hi, a quick message from me, Caroline, host of Bump to Business Owner. This episode is part of a very special six-part collaboration with Lucy Wheeler, mum and founder of Lucy Legal. If you're running a business, don't trust AI and Google to cover your legalities. Lucy Legal was created to make your life easier. Check out Lucy Legal for real legal guidance, templates, and support. Go to the link in the show notes of this episode. Now on with the show. Hello and welcome to Bump to Business Owner. I'm your host Caroline Marshall, and today we are back with Lucy Legal, but we are flipping it a little bit. So recently we had our milestone of reaching 100 episodes, and I thought how fun to use this opportunity with Lucy when we're getting deeper on some topics for her to potentially ask me a few questions and interview me. And this is the first time on the podcast, so I'm truly honoured. It's with you, Lucy, who I followed, connected with ever since the start of my business journey. We're around the same time in business, not too far at the same stages of motherhood. So I'm really intrigued for today. I'm very excited / a little bit nervous.
I'm really excited. So thank you so much for entrusting me with this. I cannot believe that you've reached 100 episodes. Can you believe that you're at that milestone?
No. And I think around the same time, Giovanni Fletcher got to 300 episodes with her podcast, and they actually did the same thing. So I didn't actually get the idea from that, but they did. I think Emma Willis, is it Emma Willis that interviewed her or someone amazing? But I was like, I remember listening to her podcast like way back 2018, or actually I didn't, one of my colleagues did. She wasn't even a mum, and I was like in denial of motherhood. She was like, Caroline, listen to her, it's really good. And I was like, I'm just not there yet, I'm not ready. So I'm like, wow, she's made 300 episodes, and I felt she's been around since podcasting began, it feels like. So it is exciting. I'm proud of getting here and kind of keep discovering, finding out how we can be of benefit to the community, seeing the numbers increase steadily. You know, it's hard work having a podcast, so I'm really proud of us and the team, who are award-winning, by the way, and that it's been really nice to build this little team within Upsource for it.
Yeah, and tell people, obviously they might be just joining you now from the most recent episodes, and obviously we've been doing a bit of a collaboration together, so you might have some new listeners, but tell us where this began in terms of the podcast. Where did the idea come from, and why did you want to do it?
I think I had the idea as soon as I started the business. And, you know, I think there is a lot to be said about when you have a baby and being very creative and having all the ideas. And I've seen it in other women. The challenge is you just don't have the time to follow them through. I think it's because you start to see all these problems with motherhood and you're like, why has no one fixed this? Why is no one talking about this? But I think often as well, I don't know about you, Lucy, I think we're a bit closed off to motherhood, and there's a bit of divide between motherhood and pre-motherhood, and there's a real divide, and I think it starts to merge more when, like, now my child-free friends are more immersed in what it's like, because you know you have to be, it's part of the nature, and we need to be involved in their child-free lives, they need to be involved in our children. So I think that merges less, but when you have a whole group of you pre-motherhood, I think we're all quite closed off, and they're a different group to us, and we don't really take that time, and I think that's how society has made it, which I think is something that is needing to be fixed. But how this started was I was made redundant. In my first job when I was 2018, I became a mum to my son. It wasn't timed well. We were about to get married, so I had the baby 4 months before our wedding. I worked for a startup virtual assistant agency run by very young men, who I did really well there. I kept getting promoted, but it was all through overworking. And when I became pregnant, it was just, I had a crash bang into, you can't overwork while pregnant. And I was so passionate about my job, but I did have to be written off for stress, something I thought I would never have. I was so reluctant to be written off. The doctor was like, you need to go out the room. If you won't be written off part-time for 2 weeks, then we're going to have another chat. And she was amazing, this doctor. But ultimately, I went back to work very quickly. It didn't work out. I thought you could just, if you were ambitious, you could just work like you didn't have kids. And I was fully invested in that narrative, like a true millennial. And then 2019, it came crashing down. They made me redundant. I felt like the whole of my identity had gone, which I'd been building up in that company. They made me feel like one of the owners. Spoiler, you're not an owner unless you've got equity. And yeah, that happened. And I just felt I'd failed. Like, I'd failed at motherhood and career. I tried to be this person, the flagship of my friends, to do this. And I just felt I have got this so wrong. And then slowly I started to find organizations like Pregnant Then Screwed and realize it wasn't me. I read a book called Mother of All Jobs, and it was the first book that I was like, oh, it's not me. it's society. This is an issue. Like, this isn't me failing. This isn't working. And I went to get another job, and then COVID happened, and I ended up jobless. And that's when I started Upsource. And I just think from the beginning, motherhood and Upsource have been so entwined. Upsource wouldn't have happened unless I became a mother. And Upsource helped me be a better mother and be the mother I wanted to be. But also Diary of a CEO started coming around in COVID when I was around my second son. And I'm like, God, there's none of these stories though. None of them are breastfeeding and these tech bros like I used to work for who can like couch surf while they're not raising kids. And I was like, we need to talk about this because our ambition doesn't go anywhere. We need our businesses, we need our ambition, but we need space to also talk about motherhood because it's not a criticism that it's different. It is different, you know, and I wanted to change that narrative and have those discussions and raise awareness for us. So that is where the podcast was born.
Wow, you have had such an incredible journey and such a journey that I think is inspiring to people. So I hope that you can, I don't want to say change the narrative, because I know that we've talked before and you said like you've had to process a lot of what happened in terms of what happened to you. And I think, as you say, you wanted to work, you believed that you could do both and that you could have a business and a baby and nothing would change with your career. And there's nothing wrong with wanting that too. And I think it just depends sometimes on the level of help that we have, that we don't realize how much support and how much of a village that some people might have behind the scenes. You know, if you're saying, oh, I can do both, I can continue to work in non-stop hours and I don't need a break. And I'm really pleased that healthcare professional stopped you and said, like, I need to sign you off work and you need to rest. And it must have been very, very hard for you then to have sacrificed so much, like given everything to your career and sacrificed some of those motherhood moments for then it to be turned around to you and say, actually, we need to let you go.
Yeah, that was just really hard to process. And I wish they'd been as kind as saying, we need to let you go. That would have been a very nice way to tell me, Lucy, because it wasn't done well either. And it took a lot of time to process that. And I do say COVID did bring back that time with my son when he was 18 months old. That was a silver lining that I got. And also now, my kids being 7 and 5, I do have that retrospect, like, I am so much more flexible than so many of my friends who did the full year's maternity leave, but now they're struggling to get there for school runs and using all the wraparound care, not through choice, because that is a great choice to have if it's a choice, but it's through necessity. And so I can see how it's paid off by making those mistakes. But at the time I beat myself so much, like stopping breastfeeding earlier than I should have done, like just missing out. Like, he was a really cute, easy baby, missing out on some of that, even though I did put things in place like having a nanny, like, and that sounds really posh, but she was like just out of university. We're still friends with her now, she's great. So I wasn't paying huge amount for her versus like a professional nanny per se, you know. So he was at home sometimes when I was, and I could see him, and I tried to take Friday afternoons more flexibly, but the culture wasn't set up for that, and it built up resentment amongst some people on the team, I know. But that was like my clinging on of trying to have that time with him on a Friday. I remember actually when he was 9 months old and I had to go on a hen party, and I say had to because I'd gone on so many hen parties that first year as well, so it wasn't even just working, like I had to also go to these hen parties and pretend I wasn't a mum, and I really struggled with that. And I went on one, and it meant I got the Friday morning with him, and I was like, wouldn't this be nice if like this was my life right now, like making my baby breakfast. And he was only 9 months old. And I had those moments where I felt really sad. And that's why I went and invested in trying to have a good maternity leave for my second. And I had a lot of regrets, but now I know it was just part of the journey, and I don't regret it now, because I hopefully and will continue to hopefully be flexible while my kids will still need me as teenagers. Because something I learned from this is to listen to other mothers, so I try to listen to mothers of teenagers and what their kids need from them.
And I think this is what is so hard, isn't it? And I think that your journey is going to resonate with a lot of people, because you wanted your career, like you were making the choices at that time. You were the one saying that you wanted your career to continue. You were the one that was saying, I want my wedding to happen 4 months after having the baby. And even though you said that you had family and friends who was really supportive and caring for you, they were just sort of being there and saying, is this what you want? And you did want that at the time. And it's only almost afterwards when you're looking back and saying, did I dedicate enough time, or was I there enough? And you've sort of said, oh, you've reconciled it a bit because you had more time because of the way the world happened with COVID. But I think for anybody listening, you can't win. I just don't
Yeah.
think whichever choice you make, if you had spent more time with your child, I think there'll be people who are listening on the other side who are potentially 8 months into a maternity where they haven't gone back, seeing people on away days with business or hearing about people get promoted and thinking, have I done the wrong thing here? When they go back to work after maternity leave, thinking they're behind and they've missed out on so much of the career and they're getting left behind. I think it's difficult from both sides, but I think from what you've said since, like you can't get those time moments back with your children when they're that age. And I think there's a lot of pressure, isn't there, on us as parents. You only get 16 summers or 18 summers, or it's only
Oh,
this
that's rubbish.
count, and like just all the time. And I keep thinking, you don't only get 18 summers with your children. I'm back home all the time. Wait till the summer. My parents will have me back. I'll be taking their grandchildren and be like, I'm back. I'm over
I've
your...
spent more time with my dad and my stepmom the past like
Oh my
five
gosh.
summers than I did,
Exactly.
especially as a teenager when I was out.
And my dad laughs about it as well. And like you have that extra relationship, do you know, like you have another
Mm.
relationship with them in those future years. And gosh, I can't even imagine what that's like having grown up children to parent. But I think for you and your journey, I think what's been so fantastic about what you've done is you blend the business ideas and the podcast and these conversations so that they are useful and helpful for so many people. So that you have got people, for example, who are considering how they're going to juggle motherhood and running a business, for example, and you invite people into the discussions who can tell their story, but they intertwine their expertise in a way that doesn't feel like they're being dictated to, that this is the way you must do motherhood with a business or like anything like that. People can listen to a conversation whether they've got children or not, because you're blending those things together so well.
Yeah, and I think it's just being aware of every decision you make, it's the reason why. And I think mine was from a place of insecurity mixed with, seeing what it's like if a woman isn't financially thriving and independent. And for me, that is still really important and that's never going to go away. So I just constantly have to blend that with motherhood.
You were working and you found out you were pregnant, and then you were going to get married, and then you continued to work alongside raising your eldest, went back to work, potentially you think now too soon, continue to work, grew, developed within the business, were helping them, being everything to them, but then were made redundant in a way that didn't feel good. And then was it COVID that happened next, or did you have another baby before COVID?
No, that was summer of 19, and I was like, what the hell am I going to do? I went into panic mode. I was like, I need to cancel the childcare and all this. And Greg was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. My redundancy wasn't fair. And so I did manage to extend the package. They were just going to give me minimum, which I think was 6 weeks due to my years of service. I extended that to, in total, it looked as 3 months because basically by the negotiations and then by the end point. So I would have had 3 months. And I went job hunting. I got 3 rounds for Monzo because I was like, that looked great because it was like completely virtual and customer success, which is what I did. I ended up going to a friend's family business. It was fine. Basically, I thought, okay, right. I had this conversation with Greg because I had all these ideas. I was like, I did sit down and think I'd like to be a business owner, not the virtual assistant world, because my dad said, why don't you just start that? And I was like, nope, never going to do that again. I was totally put off after that. But I thought, I've done this wrong. Like, maybe I just need a job 4 days a week so I can be a mum on a Friday and, have that time with Rafe on my own. And then 4 days a week, I will keep my skills ticking over, be in a job where it's not like I was exhausted from the years I spent at that agency, I think, and burnout after we've had an amazing Dr. Claire on this podcast, who's a burnout doctor. And me and her had similar burnout timelines. And like what I discovered from our chat, which was lovely, was that I never fully recovered from my burnout. I didn't have time. And I think it was the first time I could be like, I am exhausted from giving my everything and it's still not worked out for me. So I went to this family business and it was fine. We weren't a right fit. Family businesses do have a particular kind of culture, which isn't the sort of culture that I work well with. So when COVID happened, I think it was a blessing in disguise. But what happened, because it's a family business, it was very much, they didn't tell us anything. So it wasn't until the end of April, I got a letter saying I'd been furloughed. And I was like, oh, which means you're getting money. If anyone doesn't remember what furlough meant, it meant you were getting paid. But I thought I was just at home unpaid, and again failed at my job, at home unpaid. And I was like, either the world is telling me to be a business owner or the world is telling me to be a stay-at-home mum, and I chose the business owner.
That's really hard as well, isn't it? That sometimes the things that are happening to us, and I don't want to say the stories we're saying to ourselves, but almost that thing of like the pressure we put on ourselves. Like you were saying before, you wanted to be the leader of the people saying this can be done. This is like, I can have this life with motherhood. And I think that often, because it is so hard to juggle the two, and I don't think people really ever admit it. We see people online who seem to have got everything together, but it's really, really hard. And often something has to give. And if it's not your career, it's time with your child, or it's time with your friends or your family or your relationship, something has to give there. So you'd got to the point where you were then furloughed and utilize that time to set up Upsource. So tell people, obviously everyone will know that you run the fantastic podcast, and they may only know you as the person who is the podcast show host, but tell people more about what Upsource do.
So Upsource, we're a virtual assistant agency. We're now a 40-strong team of EAs, PAs, administrative professionals, operations, business support. The term EA is very fluid in this day and age, but basically we support SMEs, startup scale-ups, leaders, founders be successful. We can take a brief, anything to do operational, productivity, that side of things, and then we'll fill that out. We work on a fractional, largely virtual, a little bit of in-person, retained basis. So all my team are contracted. I'm providing them flexible work through our clients that come to Upsource who are looking for great people. And that's what we provide. And I've been in this industry for 10 years now. And there's aside from my passion for founders and mothers, I have a huge passion, and it's no coincidence that all my passions have come down to females and women, because over 98% of the profession worldwide, globally, are women. And if you can imagine, you're a lawyer, Lucy, and there's been a glass ceiling that women have had to smash in your industry in order for you to pave the way for you to get where you were and make it easier. And I'm sure there's a lot of work to do. But in a profession that's over 98% female, there wasn't even a glass ceiling, because it was just like, you just stay there. There's no progression, there's no learning development. And I think finally we're getting to a place where so many organizations, especially with AI, especially with understanding operational streamlining and really understanding admin, it can make a huge difference to businesses. And this is the area we've been managing and thriving in and evolving in since, our roles are so different now, from 1950s to the 1980s to the 1990s, and we're seeing another evolving of it again. And so it's another area I'm hugely passionate in. And that's when that COVID lockdown happened. I was like, what can I do? And I knew I was a great VA. I was like, I've always been good at this.
But what I'd love to know, because obviously you're supporting other business owners, and they're almost the bits that are chaotic, really, in their business. How did you find the time and the space to bring peace and calm to so many other businesses? Like, isn't that a lot of responsibility for you to hold within all of those businesses?
Yeah, I think when I've been a working VA, it's all about the scope and the clarity, so how you're supporting them. So I'd have one client, say, who's a plumber, and potentially a one-man band, other than all the other plumbers, so similar model to mine as well. And he needed me at one point. He was like, oh, I see you like a business coach. You're not just the, and he was using me in this way. And then I'd have, say, two young founders of a startup. I wasn't doing inbox management for them, but had lots of, say, routine tasks, lots of ad hoc things, lots of things I knew that were happening. So I do think a blend of different clients is needed. You couldn't have 4 of the same clients. But I think when you know how to do this job, you're very used to going in, and there's a set format for going into someone's inbox and making it tidy, pulling out what's needed for the day. And you've got to understand that client. And it's no different to working in-house. I mean, my main job was supporting 2 C-suite directors when I was in the NHS, the director of operation, chief operating officer, and the medical director. But because I was good at my job, I would be doing holiday cover for all the directors at some point. I think at one point I had like 6 of them that I was looking after. So I always go for the VAs that come to me and say, I was technically looking after 2, but at one point I'd looked after everyone in that building, and I'm like, you are the go-to PA.
Okay, so then you were doing it, and then as your client base grew, you took on more people, or did you always create Upsource to be an agency?
Yeah, so I'd actually, between starting Upsource and still working at this family business, I did a 10-hour a month contract with a content writer. And it was through an old NHS contact who'd reached out to me, knowing I'd gone to this world. And I thought, I've got the headspace. I'm working these flat hours. The woman was lovely, and it was only 10 hours a month, and I had my Fridays. I thought, like one Friday a month I could get some childcare, or for a morning get someone to help me while I do this. And then so I already had her in place, and me and her got on a call in the COVID lockdown, and I was like, look, I just want to chat to you because I don't think I've got a job anymore. Do you still need me? Because I know not everyone is this. I'm not alone in what's going on right now. She was in content writing. Everyone was going online. Everyone needed her. She was busier than ever. And she was like, no, I still need you. I've budgeted for you. Great that you're around. And also I'll tell all my network. And I'm going to make it clear now, though, I was not Superwoman, because it makes it sound like I went full on, got clients. I didn't. I was also found out 2 weeks into lockdown, I was pregnant with my second, and it followed the pattern of just crazy morning sickness, and I was the main carer for our son while my husband worked. So I would barely do about an hour or two a day, and that was largely building my business, talking to a web designer, starting to put out emails to people I'd worked with in the past, telling them what I was doing and if they wanted a VA. And somehow the timing managed to work. So I had Lauren, who was my content writer, first ever client, and a couple of bits and pieces come through her network. So nothing huge, just some ad hoc pieces. And while I was building the website, and then by the summer, enough clients, I had 2 40-hour clients, which is a good sizable amount of time. For me, fully booked was 120 hours a month. That's what I needed to replace my income. So my son could go back to nursery when the world opened 4 days a week. And that I got it by the July. It was like I'd manifested it. It all came at the point where I could also tell my work I wasn't coming back because I was pregnant, and I'd consulted with Pregnant Then Screwed what my options were, because they wanted me back in the June. Firstly, I didn't have childcare in the June. Our nursery decided not to open. Too many parents were nervous. But by the June, they wanted us back, and I was told, Pregnant Then Screwed told me, they were like, there's no guidance if it's safe for you to travel within your pregnancy. So it was like a good month. They didn't know if the tube was safe. I did end up traveling on the tube later. So I was like, I'm not coming back based on this. And also, like, I am going to go for it with this because it's not a fit. And we did have talks about me freelancing for them that didn't work out. But with being pregnant with my second, I had a clear timeline and knew I wanted to do, with the help of Amanda Johnson, my coach. I was like, I want to take maternity leave, and I want to hand over my clients, which was about 4 or 5 at the time, to associates, and step away and grow the business to an agency model. So there was a goal.
And there was a plan. And let me take you back a minute, because you said then, it feels like I manifested the clients. Now, for those of us, myself included, who may not believe in manifestation and potentially believe in the hard work that it will have done, and not to give yourself disservice, maybe you did manifest them, but what were the practical things that you did at the start to find more clients? Was it literally a case of going on calls and things and like networking? Because it was all online, wasn't it?
The best way to get clients is referrals. And I was straight up honest with Lauren, my client. We could both be honest about things. So it meant she could go out there and say, you're taking more clients, I will recommend you to everyone in my network. And that's the best way to do it. My husband told everyone, I told everyone what I was doing, so people would like see it and help promote it. So, while, I can't say my friend posting it on her Facebook got me clients, it all helps you be proactive about getting clients. But another real practical step was I emailed people I'd worked with in the past and said, I'm doing this. Get in touch. So yeah, I got in touch with people I knew and then got referred from there. I was lucky in the sense that I had been a VA employed. I had enough people in my network to know I was good at what I did, and then felt very comfortable referring me. So if you are good at what you do, it takes time, but referrals will come, and that is the best way to get clients. But yes, I did attend lots of online networking as well, which was quite draining.
Well, I couldn't agree more with that, that it is word of mouth for everything. And I think even just thinking about the way that people ask us for things and that we ask and people come to us, it works in such a way. And I think, especially somebody who has a very corporate background, and there'll be people listening who maybe are thinking of, I'd love to leave in the same way that you did, but my network is a history of like awkward conversations where like people don't talk, and it's just not very nice networking activity. Like, I feel like you can push back past that, can't you? And that it doesn't have to feel like that. There will be people still that will have met you at different things, even if it was awkward networking events, they'll still know you or know of your reputation. And it is about getting out there. And I know that a lot of the time people come to us and say, so and so recommended you, and it's gone to the point now where I don't even know, like, it's gone through so many people of recommendation that you're being recommended, and I'm like, I don't know who that person is, but amazing. And so you've had so much change though at this point. So you've got a toddler who's still in nursery. Yes. You are also trying to grow a business, your own business. We're also in a global pandemic, which is just making everything else harder. And you're pregnant at the same time.
I thought you were going to say growing a baby. Yeah, doing that too.
So you're doing all of these things and trying to juggle, and then also knowing that you're trying to create a maternity leave. Talk to us about how the emotions of that and the practicalities maybe as well of knowing that you've just won all of these clients and you've just done what you wanted to do, the goal of getting that many hours of clients within your own roster, and then you're going to give them away to other people. Yeah. How did that feel?
And, as someone who's a business owner, like you're giving your clients away. And it is that. And I think it's not just having someone come in and cover your role in a business. It's your reputation on the line, making sure that you provide people. I mean, I hear so many VAs say, I want someone better than me. And I think that's doing people a disservice to say that, because everyone will be different. But it's finding the right fit for the client and really embracing that they come on the journey. So I did consult Amanda Johnson, and I was like, I want to take maternity leave. This is what I want to do. And so she was like, look, you need to tell the clients now you're bringing on, it was like from June or July, that you're going to be taking maternity leave. So it's part of the deal. I'll be setting you up. I'll be working with you till then. And then I'll be handing you over, and you've got to trust me on this. And thankfully, I had clients that did trust me on it. And, any that didn't come on board because of that, I wasn't aware, and I don't think there really was. So I did have a very positive experience, and talked about logistics, like having a minimum term of 3 months for the VAs, while I couldn't control that, just try and put that in. And luckily, I think I had a fair few mums come on board covering, so they really got it, and they were like, yeah, we're gonna give you that time and space. And also really lucky, one of my community managers, Sue, who's still on the team, just taken her own first maternity leave recently. And she knew me from my previous roles and came on board, and I knew she could also help lead the team, and the very small team it was, but could help lead them if I wasn't there. And this was driven hugely by my regrets of not taking one, and knowing I knew with my first child, especially the first week, I was very switched off from the world. I was in this bubble in a lovely way. And I wanted that opportunity to feel that again. And so it meant then I had a very intense period. I remember, because I actually managed to time it with the transitioning between second trimester and third trimester. So I was going a little bit crazy, because second trimester I felt really good, and I didn't have that with my first due to all the overworking and burnout. But with my second, I was like, this is amazing, I've got so much energy. But I was starting to transfer into the third trimester, where I was like getting heavy, getting tired. And I remember I was doing so many conversations with potential associates that they all started to blur, and it was very stressful. But I managed to choose some amazing women, and I knew from my background in the past, I was always the queen of handovers at my previous agency. I am so thorough when it comes to a SOP, when it comes to Loom videos, when it comes to training other people. I am over thorough. So I knew, I overworked myself a bit during that period to make sure I set the team up for success. But I did things like I did a fake holiday, I think it was end of September, beginning of October. And it all worked out well, because also then in the end, I decided I was getting tired, and I was like, I actually want to finish end of November, because my son was due early December. I was like, and I knew it'd be a bit late from my first. I was like, I just want to finish. And it meant that I finished on time, really. I finished around early December. And I thought, oh God, I've set up the dream here. I was going swimming for 2 hours, and I'm like, other people are doing work. I tell you what was a real milestone, which if you know, were the full day of billable hours being done, and I'd done none of it. I was really proud of that. 7 hours of work had been done, and I hadn't done it.
And so at this point, for anybody that's listening and that does it, so you are running an agency model. This isn't just you bringing in somebody to cover maternity cover for you. So they weren't going to be covering your role and them getting paid instead of you. You'd brought them in as an agency, so that your business was getting paid. So you were, that 7 chargeable hours is coming into your pocket. And yes, you have to pay the team from that, but that's actually money for Upsource. Is that right?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Yeah, exactly. I hadn't given these people my clients. They came on as team members. So I get paid a fee, and then I pay the associates for their time that they've worked. And yeah, so it wasn't much, but I was making a little bit of money.
But that is the dream for a lot of people, is to be making money whilst not having to do the one-to-one work yourself. Not that you don't love it, but as you say, that allows you to prioritize what you need in that moment. And at that moment, it needed to be prioritization of your health so that you could welcome baby number 2 to the world.
Yeah.
So we are going through quite a lot of big shifts here, from being a corporate girly and doing everything, job is the most important, then having a baby, then grappling with getting married at the same time. We're going into COVID. We're then finding out about having another baby. We're then becoming no longer doing the corporate world or being employed, but now not only just running a business, but now actually an agency owner. So you are wearing a lot of hats and have massive identity shifts as you were going through. And then you've also got the change of becoming a mum for the second time and embracing motherhood for the second time. How did that feel for you in terms of your identity? By this point, are you accepting that you don't have to be the corporate mum and keep working? How are you feeling the motherhood the second time around?
It felt easier in some respects, and I remember saying that was crazy. I was talking to a former colleague who'd also lost her job through that agency, and I said, it's so crazy. I'm in my second trimester with my second child in a pandemic, building a business, and this feels a lot easier than the business I was working in before while pregnant, and that it does not okay. So I remember taking that time to recognize it. I think I was still having a lot of identity issues. I got pregnant 18 months after my first child, which is very normal. But now after reading a lot more, learning a lot more about motherhood and our bodies, I have so much more respect that I was still postpartum 18, you're still postpartum after in 2 years, and that my body was still going through a lot of recovery. And then I got pregnant again. So my identity was all over the place still. I remember also still not feeling comfortable with, I had a lot of friends leaving London, not feeling comfortable in a lot of my relationships. I think me and my husband were a bit distant, living a little bit kind of separately during COVID, because he was working a lot. I was just resting and trying to sort out Upsource. I think there was some bits of separate time where I don't think it was an easy year for us, but I think in my relationships, I was really struggling still, trying to communicate how hard to a lot of people that having a baby, a toddler, and being pregnant as well in lockdown was. I hadn't really had a lot of mum friends at the time. I was making the effort to chat with women who are founders and mothers and got it. But what I really struggled with is people that I've known for years and years and years not being in that stage of life, and they still weren't at that time. And I found that really, really hard, and it didn't help. And I think I still really struggled with feeling isolated. And I think that was a continuation of a lot had happened that past 2 years. So I think for me to be like, oh, I'm fine. I think I remember actually having a call with my mum and being like, I feel like I've gone through everything you could go through in a mother in the first 2 years, and I'm really struggling. And this is so hard. How am I meant to do this? And I think on paper it looked like I was running a business. I was pregnant again. I think I had it all on paper, and I was like, but this is really hard. And it's not just hard because I'm a mum pregnant with my second, trying to work. It's because there's a global pandemic and I've lost my job twice, and I feel isolated from the people I've loved, in my relationships. The irony is, I can't believe I said that to my mother, because it was about to get a whole lot harder. But yeah, I remember saying that to her, I can't believe I've been through all of this. It just feels so hard to be doing this to be my motherhood experience.
Yeah, and I can't imagine how hard that was, because it's hard enough not doing it in a global pandemic, but it's very hard for you to have had, as you say, so many extra challenges. And I think what's also hard in that circumstance is you probably feel like you are choosing those things. You are the one that chose to start a business at that time. You are the one who chose potentially to have another child. You are the one you feel like, and also who you probably feel the pressure to that you chose it, and also how lucky you are and how grateful you are. Like, you don't want to be complaining. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know we've talked
Hence
about
why
this
it's a
before.
chat with my mum, because
Yeah,
that
and
is
that's
the
the thing
person
is,
you're allowed to do it with.
yeah, I think this is where we do need to normalize it, because it's very hard, and you can find it hard and be really struggling and have gratitude at the same time. Those two things are interlinked, and they don't have to be separate. And I think this is the conversation where we need to crack it open and have it in public, because too many times we think that we can't say anything because we don't want to complain, and we're not complaining. But if we don't explain what it means and why it's hard, and it's hard because it's exhausting, it's hard because you're carrying everything by yourself, it's hard because no matter what you're doing, you're carrying not only the jobs but also the pressure of having to earn the money. Like, there's not a choice. We've talked about this before. For both of us, it wasn't like we had a choice where we could just be with our babies. We had to pay bills, we had a mortgage to pay. We almost went for the business option because it was the way that you could almost make more money, hopefully, and have more flexibility. But it was not it wasn't really a choice of, oh, I'll be a stay-at-home mum or not, because we both needed the money. And I think that's where the pressure comes in. And then there's a societal pressure of, well, you should be accelerating in your career, or you should be prioritizing your baby, or you should be super grateful for all of this and all of the opportunities that you have. And I think that's what's really, really hard, because you feel like, I can't complain because I'm so lucky, and because I chose this, I wanted these babies. But some days, weeks, months, it's really, really soul destroyingly hard, at the point where, like, you can feel so emotional and, like, you want to cry about it, don't you? Like, how will this ever get any easier?
Yeah, and we're living in a world that isn't set up to support us, so therefore we are going to feel like that, and for periods of time. But I think you hit the nail on the head. It was also, I think that's why it all came out one time, because I was like, I'm not allowed to feel like this, because I was in a position that people want to be in. And actually, I wasn't even like upset about the business, because that is a whole stress, but it was the whole, like, just being able to recognize how hard I was finding it.
You just said an interesting point before about, like, oh, society isn't set up. But not only is it not set up for our success, it's set up almost to pull us down and to bring us back down into our places, to be like, who are you to be above your station and to want more? And as you just sort of said, especially in the industry that you're in, you'll have so many people listening who are in your industry and almost saying, like, there's a ceiling of what you can do and where you can be and get back in your place, almost, still that kind of thing. The idea of not wanting too much or not asking for too much, and almost then, well, I have asked for all of this, I have created this. And sometimes I say, this is all of my mess, like, all of this has happened is some things I wanted. And yet it's really, really difficult to manage. And it is really, really hard. And I think sometimes I never want to put people off, because being a mother is the most incredible journey. Feel so lucky, so grateful all the time. I wouldn't change it for the world, but it does not mean it hasn't tested me in some of the hardest ways possible, mentally. And as you say, the exhaustion, the burnout of that kind of thing, and carrying so much, especially when you're carrying a business. And that's why I was asking you before about with the agency. It seems like an incredible business to almost carry the responsibility of lots of other people's businesses as well. There's an enormous amount of pressure that you're not only carrying their businesses, but you've also taken on an agency where you're having to pay those people to do the work as well. So making sure you've got client work for them to keep them busy, because it's their families as well that you're supporting. It's a lot.
Yeah, and the emotional support. And I've never underestimate that, because I think there are people who are like, oh, I'll just grow a team. And I'm like, no, only do it if you're in a strong enough place. And you got to do a lot of therapy if you're not, to, like, manage other people's emotions, because there will be weeks, there will be days where it feels like you can't do right for wrong. And there'll be other times where you're like, oh my God, this is an absolute pleasure. This is amazing. You know, it's just like Parenthood. And then you have other weeks where you're like, I cannot get this right.
But what did it look like, your support networks? Is there, you talked about speaking to your mum on the phone, and there's your husband, but what was life like with you and your husband throughout the period? How old is your oldest now?
He is 7. Yeah,
So
7.5.
7 years.
Yeah, 7.5.
How has your relationship changed over that period?
Oh my God, hugely. I mean, we went through, like, all the classic stereotypical stuff, which I think I remember when we had our first and we were getting married. I remember this as well, that I was like turning around and I was like, I don't know if we're going to last this, because he was living as normal, and it was pre-COVID. He worked in an office. He would just go for drinks, and I'd be like, and like I said, I was working all the time. I was feeling isolated and isolating myself in some ways because a lot of my friends were turning 30. I just didn't want to be around that. There was huge drinking culture at that time, and I think actually it's got a lot better, the drinking culture of just like chilling out and not having a drink and having a mocktail, which has got so much better. I can tell you the transition between now and 7-8 years ago with mocktails is amazing. There was nothing when I had my first, and it's been huge. In all honesty, we have been through so much. I think we were both figuring out our way, but COVID, like I said before, again, I think we were just quite separated. I was just living a bit differently to him. And, not all the time. I'm not being doom and gloom, but there were definitely just challenges where it was like, we're not finding an even path here. And it did get better actually when I got made redundant, and I had a bit more freedom with my work, and to be like, okay, I can manage being the go-to parent. I think it was making peace that I'm the go-to parent. And I think sometimes it takes me a while to process things, and also find I've done a lot of work on how to ask and how to say what I need.
It is one of those things where I do find it incredible that you walk out of the hospital with a baby and there's no exam and there's no certificate, and you just have to work out all of the things yourself.
Oh my God,
it can be really hard with your partner, because I remember with my husband, we were talking about something, and I said something about my sister whose children are a little bit older than ours, and I said, James, our nephew, is like, oh, he's doing the sleep regression now. And my husband went, oh, we're not doing that. I went, what? Oh, I don't want to do that. It's something your sister will be doing. She'll have read it in a book somewhere. And I went, no. I was like, that's not a sleep regression. You have to do one of those. He's like, what do you mean you have to do one? And he had no idea. And in reality, I probably had no idea until my sister had sent me the manual that she was going, oh, this is a sleep pattern that we've been doing when you shorten the naps and all of the things. And I think that's what's really hard is we do go into this world often, like we're laughing now, like thinking you can choose a sleep regression. We're going into this world really blind, not knowing what it's like, and then almost saying like, why are our friends not being more sympathetic or more supportive? But they have no idea what it's like, but neither did we before we entered into this world. I think there are people, okay, that do know. There'll be people who've had exposure to it, maybe through your career, maybe through different relationships or parents. But there are a lot of people, like I think both of us are saying, that we potentially were very naive going into parenthood.
Oh, and you can be really hard on the ones doing it before you. Like, oh, I'm not going to, like, as your husband said, you're not going to do the sleep regression.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. It's like, for anyone listening who doesn't understand, you don't choose that. The child just suddenly stops sleeping, and then you're like,
it's such a great place to be a parent when you're not a parent, and you're like, oh, well, we're not going to raise our kids like that. Like, they're not going to scream.
Do one of those. It's like, that's not choice.
Lie down on a shop floor, And I think something I did get right by not being the first was I was so intuitive with him. But then when I had friends who came along and were less intuitive and it all had to be science backed, I was like, oh God, like that played into my insecurities. Like, oh, I did it wrong again. This was another area I did it wrong. And I look back and I'm like, no, you did it great. You should have listened more to yourself, kind of thing.
And that's the thing. I think that's such good advice, because I watched friends who were science backed too, and I think I told you in a previous episode, I found it very lonely because I tried to keep away from other people because I didn't want that pressure of thinking I'd done stuff wrong, because I knew I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't want anyone to tell me I'd done it wrong, because I don't do well being told that. And so I was trying to keep myself to myself. But then I did see people who were literally meticulously like timing how long their baby was on a boob for. And I'm like, what are you doing? Just asking, like not criticizing it, just asking, like, what are you doing? They're like, I'm just timing this. And I was like, oh wow. They were saying, well, that's what you're meant to do. And I was like, oh, I was doing it naturally. And look, people have breastfed their children from the beginning of time. We did not have iPhones with timers on at that point. I just went through what felt right and worked for me and my baby, and that worked for two healthy babies, and we're very lucky to breastfeed them both. But I think that there is so much pressure, isn't there, of the way to do things, and there's so much information for us now as parents, as mothers. You can't take on every single idea and do all of the ideas and do everything. There is no perfect parenting.
Yeah, and I remember reading one book. What was it? Have you read it? The book you wished your parents had read, which all my baby group raved about. And then I put it down because I was like, she had one like one girl, one daughter, and I'm like, she's not living in my chaos. She doesn't know what this is, like with two children in a pandemic and like lockdown where no one can hug. And I was like, not for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, there were some areas that were fine, but others where I was just like, I can't relate to you. But others thrived off her, and I was like, okay, that's great. And I think it's, again, like we've had so many chats, you've got to pick and choose what is right for you. And actually, I think some ways I was better with my first child than my second, where I felt the pressure. Well, especially because he was, almost died after he was born. So it was like I'd already done something wrong. So I was like, now I've got to, do everything right for him. And so I did feel that pressure to be more like, oh, this is what you're meant to do kind of thing, versus my first, where I was like, oh, this is what feels right for him. And I can tell what he needs, which I was quite good at with my first.
So obviously, you're in the position where your little one was really poorly. Do you think that brought you and your husband closer together in the relationship you've been having as you've been distant before?
In the long term, it did. It's one of those things. It was a very, very traumatic event. I won't go into detail about it now. He suffered a sudden unexpected postnatal collapse, which meant he went from a few hours after birth, he went from healthy to like suddenly having lots of heart attacks and basically kept trying to die. And they just were like, he's critical. Seeing having your midwife cry is never a good sign. And also like there was around 20 doctors around him, like telling us to take a picture because they didn't know if we had any of him. And that was basically because they didn't think he was going to live. And the pity on their faces is something that can never leave you. And, for a while it was touch and go. And also the risk of what he had was a HIE, which is lack of oxygen to the brain due to collapses. In his case, women can also have HIEs during birth if there's been a lack of oxygen. Something's happened in birth, but there was nothing in our birth. It all went fine. He was at risk of cerebral palsy. So it was a huge challenge in that sense as well, because what taught me a lot is, and there's a great woman called Lottie who's now doing a huge amount of research on neonatal intensive care and trauma with the parents to educate service providers and nurses, doctors on reactions parents can have and how that's a trauma response and why that's happening, not, the science behind it. I was just watching this morning Dr. Tara Schwartz who I love, do a video this morning on trauma and how it stores in the body. So I had PTSD, and likely probably my husband did, but I definitely did. But I got told all sorts of incorrect things, like it transpires after 12 weeks. It was basically all the like worst case scenarios, basically, I was told. And while I did have some of them, like I tried to walk out on my family like that month, it was an awful place to be, especially as it was still lockdown. It was that awful lockdown before everything finally lifted and we started to get on the trajectory of going back to normal. It was that last lockdown really hit a lot of people I know. But it took a long time, and we both had to have a lot of therapy to get to, and like this isn't, again, like I said, we had hard points and then we had great points, but both of us had to do a lot of work, because going through a traumatic event is a lot of work, as well at the same time of trying to make sure that your son is going to develop how they should, I should say, because, all children are different, but we were on the lookout for cerebral palsy, So for what we went through, to feel that we could be so lucky to have a child that could live a normal life is, it takes a long time. I mean, my husband, he's definitely like more on edge than me about that. He still just can't believe it, I think, at times, even though he's the best reader in his class in reception. And that is something you're allowed to brag about when they've been through what he has.
You're allowed to brag about it anyway. And I think you've touched on so many important points here about like trying to just normalizing therapy and allowing that to be a thing. And for you to just saying like you both had to have it, to say that you had it, your husband had it.
We had it together and apart. We had all the therapy.
Yeah, and I think I love that for you, and I love that you're doing that and you're speaking about that, because people don't talk about that enough, and all of this is really hard. There's so much pressure, and I feel like sometimes having therapy is a really great thing for us to do, is to help our family and to not like necessarily. I'm not saying we overburden our friends, we definitely don't, and we should talk to friends and find a friend that you can talk to about a certain thing. I do something which my sister laughs at me about, because she says, why do you do that? Nobody does it. But I like talk to different friends about different things. So like in terms of
Yeah,
like,
and I've really learned to do that as well.
yeah, I have my friends who, they know everything that's going on, but like I'll talk to one particular friend about this thing that I find really hard, and one particular friend about this thing. So I'm not I don't want, no one wants to overburden, do they? And you think like, gosh, everyone is struggling, and they are. And like often I know when my friends say things, especially if they've got difficulties with the children that I feel like I have nothing to offer. Like, I don't know the answer either. Like, I don't know. Like, they'll say, like, your children are like, how did you do potty training so quickly? I bribed them with chocolate. Like, that was literally the honest answer. I didn't know how to do it.
And I had one who was quick and one who wasn't. So my answer would be like, some just quicker than others.
And that is the thing, isn't it? That's the reality, is that they said they wanted to do it. We literally did a day where we gave them a chocolate button every time they did it, and they just did it, and then that was the end. Like, they just did it.
God, amazing.
Yeah, and we were just, I've said like another time, so lucky. But we've got things like where they wouldn't sleep or they wouldn't do other things. Like every child is different, but it doesn't mean that and that means that sometimes they've just got a predisposition that they will be, I don't want to say easier to do it, but it's just, it works more easily, doesn't it?
Yeah. And again, and on the relationship piece, because you can easily overburden each other, and that's where friends come in and family come in, is that not everything should be a burden for my husband, what I'm going through, and you know, and same for him, while being completely open about everything. And also going through therapy is like, you realize what the parts where you should be together is that, you know, being a resilient couple and enjoying each other. And I think that's where we've come full circle on. It's like knowing that I sometimes will make things more challenging. You know, I'm not going to be the default parent, because in order for me to be a great parent, I also need to have a great business, and therefore I can't do everything. And I say this to him all the time. I'm like, I'm putting in the effort, so in 10 years time I'm not resentful of you. And vice versa. So we do have that real transparent chat, like, and we always have done. You know, we've needed the support and the help to navigate the early years of parenthood, because we went through so much. And I think, you know, I think all parents go through so much, and it really is, you know, it's not the time to be thinking things aren't right in your family, because it does get easier. And that's where we're at the point now with a 7 and 5-year-old. It's like, oh wow, we made it through.
I think it is commendable to have made it through, and I know that probably people who are listening with older children than us are thinking, just you wait, there's more to come. And we know
probably,
that. I feel like that's
the
part which you don't realise at the start, that it's so like, there are so many up and downs, and it's great when it's great, but it is also really, really hard, and you're both just navigating.
And that's what you do know as they get older. It's like, we're having a good day, tomorrow could be a shit day.
Yeah, and ride the high whilst you can. And you become a better as a team, and you realise that the other person doesn't know either. And whereas before maybe you might have had roles within your family, like one person did the cooking or one person did the cleaning, or you just knew how you worked, you knew what you were doing. You're both thrown into this world of not knowing what to do, not knowing what's the best, not necessarily having the answers. I'd said before, like, we had baby 1 who was very straightforward, baby 2 was very complicated, very difficult. Neither of us got any sleep, any respite. It was really, really hard. It was very testing on our relationship. There is that feeling of resentment to everything. You've lost your life, some lifestyle that you had, the life as you knew it before has gone, or career has changed so much, your identity has shifted, you haven't got the friendship group, you can't just go out and have a glass of wine with your friends and just, or go out on a hen do and just blow it all and just forget about everything, because you can't switch your brain off. And it's not even that, even if you could, you wouldn't want to, because you're also feeling super torn that you want to be there for the family. It's very, very difficult. And I heard someone say before that if you have children under 2 years old in your family, you shouldn't be making any decisions about your relationship. And I remember hearing that when we had our first one and being like, that's interesting, I wonder why they're saying that, and that's interesting fact to know. And then with the second, knowing how hard it was, being like, oh gosh, now I understand, because we were so tested in our relationship for the second time around, that it was really questioning everything. And I think, again, like we've both said, having children so close together, obviously we all know how you get pregnant, how you have a child, but it's not necessarily always a full choice, in the sense that for us, we weren't sure how long it would take after recurrent miscarriage before. And we knew both of us were getting older. We didn't want a huge gap. We didn't know it was going to happen straight away. We were so lucky. But the pressure that puts on your body by having two so close together, and then the hormones, and then the drop, and then everything with that, you don't really realize. And I think that a lot of the support network has gone by the time you get to like,
Oh yeah,
it's 18
toddlerhood.
months
It goes.
out. Like nobody's around
It goes.
support because you're 18 months later, and you then, that's when, like, yeah, when your child is 18 months old, you might have got a not easy to manage 4 or 5 year old, 6 year old maybe, and
Yeah.
you are then juggling that with a young baby or a toddler, and it's very, very hard on your relationship. There is no time. You are being everything to everyone. Childcare costs are astronomical. You're pretty much everyone is back to work after a year, so you're juggling either running a business or working back full time, employed, and trying to juggle the children, not seeing the children, and a relationship. It's so hard, isn't it?
It's so hard, and I think you're bang on with what you said on not making any decisions. And I think you can extend that to even at all if you don't need to make any life decisions. Actually said that advice to a friend of mine who was 4 months postpartum recently. She had a hard birth, and she found those early weeks challenging and stuff, and he like talking about what their decisions with the second child, and I was like, now's not the time. Like, if you don't have to, I get like having to make that decision maybe, but at 4 months postpartum, when things have been really hard, like a hard start for you, some breeze through it, great, good for them. But I think that is just general wisdom in general, is you're going through a really hard time. It would have been such a mistake for like our relationship to have not gone through everything we can, and we're so resilient because we know we can get through those things, and that is something you're going to get tested in life. We're going to be tested again, sadly, and like by not us, I'm saying like external things we can't control.
That's the thing, is it's the control. You want to control. So you think like, if I end the relationship, or if I can craft my life, this is the only part of my life I have control over. I can't control the children and what they're going to do. And even if I try and make a plan, it doesn't work. And almost the only part of it that you feel that you have any control or, I don't know, agency over your life is the fact that you have a partner and you can decide what's going to happen with them. And I think it's really hard. I think parenting together with someone else is also really hard, in the sense that you both have, maybe you live a similar lifestyle, but then you both have different parenting styles and you want to do things differently. We're wearing so many hats. No wonder it feels exhausting, and no wonder it's hard to get through. So I have a couple of questions with you to finish. You have shared before that you have faced a number of challenges on your journey of motherhood. Is there anything that you look back on now that you would do differently? I know you've come to terms with a lot of the things that you've learned from those, and that is your life. Was there anything that you would say, actually it'd be helpful, or I would definitely do this differently?
Less apologetic. I mean, I answered this straight away. I love it. In the first year, definitely with Rafe, just be less apologetic about when I need time with my baby, or like if I need to meet a certain place because I'm lugging a baby across town or I'm pregnant, and just advocating, having that voice, which I know, like I've done work on, that I struggle with to communicate my needs. Just looking back, I could have done, and that's my learning, is like, no, that's not for me. And I, after learning that now, it's nice to see, but yeah, I wish I could have just been a bit more like, no, I'm not going to do this because I'm tired today, or no, let's not do dinner at 8, do it at 7 because I'll be asleep on the table at 9. Like things like that. I missed out on some things because I was too scared to say. Okay. You don't know what it's like for an exhausted pregnant woman.
Okay, love that. And so less apologetic. Second question of 3, do you have any practical tips for business owners who are going to step away from their business? It might be for motherhood, or it might be that they just want a break. They might want to take a sabbatical. So do you have any practical tips for people who are going to step away from their business for maybe, let's say, a 3-month period?
Yeah, I mean, write a plan, like a business plan, but a break plan kind of thing. What are you going to do? Right? It doesn't need to be long, depending. All businesses are different. So I can't give you like the do this, do that, like I did with mine. And then, it might involve, if it's not a break that's like, so say it's a break where you're not delivering, you might need to do a content plan, sales and marketing plan to keep that all going while you're away. Or if, like me, you're putting team in place, and then often, whether it is just keeping your sales and marketing going, or it is bringing on a team to deliver, you need to have all your processes in place. This is all the unsexy piece that people like to tell you about automations and tech and AI, and it all starts with a written down process. Have that in place and have a very simple, good tech stack to deliver it. So I'm talking about, if you've not got your Microsoft or Google Workspace set up properly, get it started. A simple task management tool. Doesn't need to be all the crazy ClickUp things and Notion. It could be just Google Tasks or Microsoft To Do, whatever it is, but just make sure those basics are in place for it. But it all starts with, like running a business, it all starts with a plan.
Amazing. So plan it and plan it and do it. If you want to take 3 months off, either have to because you want that maternity leave, or if you just want to take a sabbatical, just as simple as putting that plan in place and making your business work without you. Love that.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, and then the final question is, you have such an incredible podcast now. You've got a really great community of people that come to you and that listen episode in, episode out of all the things that you're sharing. Where do you see the podcast in 5 years' time? Where would you like it to be?
I'm in a place right now, I'm still discovering it and seeing it. I don't know, one of my coach Amanda said, like, she sees it's another marketing tool for the business, it's another profile. I want to continue putting out stories, and if we can do that, we do need money. So I would like to be in a place where we are consistently bringing in partnerships, sponsorships, whatever it is to keep this going and be revenue generating so it can run itself, because I do feel it has its place. Because the hard part about motherhood as well is when people want to start businesses, it's like you have all the ideas and then to keep it running and keep consistently passionate about it, as you know, like any business. But I think especially when it's tied to motherhood, it can be very draining and tiring. And I'm really proud that we're in the top 6% by getting to 100 episodes of podcasts, because most don't make it that far. Wow. And that shows my commitment to this. So my commitment to this is, if please everyone can keep listening, showing up, referring it to our friends, we can continue to get bigger guests and have more people, like more investment in this podcast would be amazing.
Oh, I love that. And I think that, as you say, getting to this point is something that maybe wasn't the goal at the start, like saying 100 episodes, and you've not just said, okay, I want to get more listeners or just make it to like 200 episodes. It's about keeping that community together and making that difference, isn't it? You're bringing together some really important conversations, and I think that's what's so exciting for what you do, and that's why we really wanted to partner with you. And I'm so grateful to you for giving me the opportunity to sponsor the podcast and to come and sit with you for all of these hours and chat through some topics which are difficult to talk about, and also which I don't feel are given enough coverage. But mostly I'm just really grateful to you for letting me interview you for your 100th episode. So on behalf of all of your listeners, I have to say congratulations and well done on achieving such a huge milestone. And I'm sure that your listeners and I are excited for the next 100 episodes. So thank you so much for bringing us along on your journey of motherhood as well. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to that special episode brought to you in collaboration with Lucy Legal. Over 6 episodes, we'll be discussing big topics in motherhood and business, relationships, finances, maternity leave, and AI. If you're a business owner and want to make sure that your legal terms are correct, and most importantly, that you are covered, go to Lucy Legal for real legal guidance, templates, and support. Link in the show notes of this episode. Thank you.